is something very rare at Donington at the moment. It is sunshine, because after 2 pretty grim days of weather, the Donington Decider for the Intelligent Money British GT Championship is on a bright and sunny, if cold, morning here. The warm-up session is about to get underway, and of course championships on the line in GT3 and GT4 this weekend, which we'll discuss over the course of this warm-up session. David Addison and Joe Osborne trackside, Bryn Lucas down in the pits, and the hardy faithful are out early this morning. They're not exactly warm, but they are looking forward to a good day of racing. And Joe, yet again, we've got a championship coming down to the wire in both classes and a stellar entry.
Yeah, really good. 34 cars, 17 split across. So it's going to be really difficult to call this from the warm-up. Normally we use the warm-up as a bit of a gauge of where the track's at. It's not rained overnight, but it's so cold and such a heavy tube, the track's still very slippery. So a lot of teams are going to be using this, I think, to get their arms eye in. But I think the first time they get some proper dry running, it's going to be the race. So a lot of these teams are going to be trying to get the tyre pressures and all that sort of metrics sorted. But this is going to be a really difficult day for those championship protagonists.
And one of those championship protagonists is Dan Harper. He shares with Darren Lung, and Dan Harper is in the pit lane with Bryn Lucas.
Yeah, he certainly is, and what a lap you put in yesterday, because, you know, when Darren handed the keys over to you, it wasn't looking all that great for you, Dan, but you put it together. Appeals going on around you at the moment, so we're not sure if that is going to be pole position or provisional pole at the moment. So talk us through your thoughts of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, at the minute we just need to see how it all plays out. I didn't know until I was lying in bed last night, and I seen the British GT put a post up to say we were them pole. So yeah, we're going to have to see. Obviously Aston Martin with Beechstein, they've appealed it. It was quite a tricky situation, as the session was red flagged and the conditions were so crazy. So I guess they have their point to argue. I think, to be honest, obviously it would be nice to start pole for us, just try and get our heads down and go. But either way, we're on the front row, and that's the best place to be. So either way, we don't mind, as long as we're still in the front row.
Just keep on smiling, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just to explain about yesterday, the grid provisionally set with the aggregation of the drivers' times, because you have driver A and driver B, and you add the times together. But you needed to do 2 flying laps, and the car that was on pole position provisionally, the Aston Martin of Andrew Howard, was not able, in Andrew's hands, to do 2 flying laps, and therefore it has lost its time. It goes to the back of the GT3 part of the grid, but it is under appeal. So provisionally the BMW will start from pole, which is good news for their championship hopes, but underline the word provisional, because the Aston Martin team and others are still discussing that with the stewards. And of course it was only a 10-minute session. They weren't helped by the fact there was a red flag, and even worse for Andrew Howard, he had at least 2 extra pit stops to keep changing tyres.
Yeah, I'm pretty pro the appeal, to be fair. I get you've got to do 2 laps, that's written in the rules, you can't argue that, but it's a pretty strong force majeure that Andrew Howard was about to do that second lap when a red flag came out that he wasn't anything part of. So I think the appeal might go through, to be honest. I think we might see them back on pole position, which is going to get in the mind of the BMW. They're currently on pole, so they're happiest. So then suddenly to be put back to second, they're on the outside into turn 1 on a track that's going to probably be quite green on the outside. It's going to be hard work for them, but Harper there, he looks proper baby-face assassin, isn't he? You look at the BMW, that massive thing. You can't believe he's big enough to drive that absolute animal of a car, that slow-mo as well. You can see he really hustles that car. And I've loved Harper this year. First year in British GT, super experienced in other forms of GT, Porsche Carrera Cup predominantly, but he's come in with like a fresh attitude really, and corners where you don't overtake, he's been overtaking, and this is against the 7 other factory drivers out there in GT3, and he's been absolutely mega, hence why they're in the championship hunt.
Yeah, I mean, he's come out of the BMW junior team. Oops, off into the gravel has gone the Andrew Howard Ross Gunn Aston. Andrew Howard at the wheel of it. That's not going to help his mood, is it?
That's a bit of a dirty protest there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to have got gravel all over that car, and the marshal's going to try and push it, but I think it's quite dug in there. It's going to be pretty hard to get out, and I think that's probably going to go to a red flag, and then it depends if Peter Daly, the race director, is going to stop the clock. But this is going to hurt. A lot of teams are trying to use this warm-up to get warmed up for the day, because I don't think they're going to get that car out without assistance.
No, I was looking at those witness marks coming down through the Craner curve, trying to work out whether he'd had a spin at the bottom or across the grass and ended up there. But either way, that's going nowhere in a hurry. So Andrew Howard's car is off the road, and here from the onboard, Joe, is what he did.
It's an interesting angle to go all the way round to the other way, so he's got to have almost done a full 360 and a half, I think. Turning in is where you're going to come, and it's going to go all the way round again and then dig in as the right side tyres go in. But yeah, that was a big old rotation, and the big problem for Andrew Howard is, as we see the JCB come to recover it under local yellows, hopefully all the drivers have seen that they really need to slow down because he's really not that far off the track. But the big problem for Andrew Howard is that's going to be the last time he drives that car until the race. So potentially he's going to be on pole position. So the next time he sits behind the wheel of that going through that corner is going to be at the start of the race. So that's going to be pretty nervy for him to get up to speed.
This is the other car in the championship fight. We've touched on the BMW. Now, James Cottingham is the man behind the wheel of the 2Cs Motorsport Mercedes. He doesn't have his regular co-driver Johnny Adam here because Johnny is away in Portugal on European Le Mans Series duties. He was hoping he'd be able to come and be here this weekend and take yet another British GT crown. Aston Martin said no. Phil Keane was in the offing to drive the car, and then Mercedes AMG stepped in and said, well, actually, we'll give you a factory driver if you want. You can have Philip Ellis, who's never raced in the UK before. He's Anglo-German Swiss. Very, very capable driver, but Donington is new, British GT is new. He's only ever been to the UK 3 times in his life, so we'll see how he fares. He's learning all the time, and there you've got the 2 championship AMs, if you like. Darren Leung in the BMW, James Cottingham in the Mercedes. 13 points between them, and the BMW, after a win at Brands Hatch, has the longer pit stop as well.
Yeah, that's going to be really difficult. They need a safety car over that pit stop window or the start of the second stint. But it's actually quite interesting mentality here. Darren Leung does a lot of boxing in his spare time to keep up his fitness. But no matter their strategy, if I was Century, I'd be telling Darren, stay out. We told you to do 1 lap, but we want you to stay out. Fill Cottingham's mirrors up, show him you're faster, rough him up before we start the race. Because we got 2.5 miles here. How have our 2 championship GT3 contenders found each other? That's brilliant psychological warfare going on already. It's a long pull-out. You can see in the background where he was stuck, where the gravel's being disrupted. They may be very kind and unhitch that and let him drive on from there. The team may advise Andrew not to carry on. There is Philip Ellis in a very blue and chrome helmet. But yeah, he has had a baptism of fire this weekend. Jules Gounon alongside him, 2 of the fastest Mercedes factory drivers out there. They've got a big task ahead of them. It'll be interesting to see if any inter-team help comes in. We're used to saying rivalry, but will Gounon be willing to help Cottingham and today Ellis win that championship?
Time will tell. GT4 is up for grabs as well, and this is one of the cars that's potentially going to leave as the championship winner. Number 90 of Charles Clark and Jack Brown. They had this enormous, was it 48-point lead going into Portimao, and after a bad race there and a really torrid time at Brands Hatch when they retired within the first, felt like quarter of an hour, they come here still in the lead, but on the back foot. And diminutive Dan is about to get on board number 91 BMW.
Yeah, just making sure his neck's still connected, which is always a positive, I think, for a fast lap time. But yeah, the Optimum guys have been super unfortunate in those last 2 races. Like I said yesterday in qualifying, they've actually swapped chassis now. They feel like that first one they've been in all year has been tainted with bad luck. So they've gone for their sister car, which they did back-to-back test and slightly preferred it. So it'll be interesting to see. But all the McLaren GT4 teams struggling in Q2 and complaining a little bit about the deadly BOP, just saying that in the wet they're okay, but they're struggling for straight line performance. The BOP in the McLaren has 4 different power settings, and they are on that lowest of the 4, so they can do all right in the corners, but they're struggling, especially once again to 5th gear, struggling there with Tommy Jumpnu in the paddock, number 7 GT4, just trying to work out where he spun. That looks like it's at the chicane. He's gone to do the national track, done a U-turn and carried on, so potentially probably just dropped it on the white line on entry, lost the rear under braking, but lucky with all that tarmac runoff, he hasn't found any gravel, and if the cameraman hadn't done him dirty, we wouldn't have known anything about it. But
yeah, the Skechers McLaren not quite so sure-footed, ho-ho, but he's got away with it. McLaren GT3 had a pretty torrid day yesterday, but we've got a replacement car for Paddock Motorsport, I think.
Yeah, speaking to the guys, they did do the chassis and those deadly longies I was talking about on the concrete wall to the left there as the sister paddock car goes there. Luckily for them, Enduro Motorsport, a rival McLaren team, had their spare car and they've loaned it for him today, so it's in an all black carbon fibre base livery, so it looks quite mean. Andrew Howard has got going rather tentatively, hopefully just shaking some gravel out off the racing line. I expect him to box this lap and probably get Ross Gunn in just to give it a once-over. See him, 2Cs here doing a full practice pit stop. Al Fleming there, the engineer, tall guy with the lollipop at the front. can see that cable connected to the rear tyre. That's the ERV strap. That's got to be there during the fueling to sort of get rid of any sparking issues.
Now, what this also shows is how busy and how cramped pit lane can be, and how you've got to get on with your neighbour. Now, in terms of the pit stops, you can anticipate the GT4 cars to come in before GT3 just because of the minimum driver time that the regulations dictate. It is to try and alleviate some of this crowding in the pit lane. But, you know, 2Cs, Barwell, another double car team, they're not going to want both cars in at the same time and double stack because there's the space, there's the personnel problem. Let's hear from Bryn Lucas just briefly while we're talking about pit stops. He's in the middle of all this.
Thanks very much there, David. I am indeed looking at the two 2Cs cars now in the pits, and something you were talking about a little bit earlier on was whether or not Ian Loggy was going to help out James Cottingham and Philip Ellis. I spoke to Ian Loggy yesterday, and his answer, quite bluntly, was no. He didn't ask for help at Brands Hatch, he said, to allow him to stay in the championship, so it'd be wrong for them to ask him for help, is what he said to me.
Right, now we know. Thank you, Bryn.
Wow. I've worked with Ian a lot, and I love Ian, and I can imagine him saying it exactly like that. He's actually in the background there in that white D2 suit, James Cottingham, looking like he needs to remember to blink a little bit, isn't he? I'm sure this day is going to pass him quicker than his wedding day.
Hashtag cheeky, explain.
I've got no idea. I think I'd rather not ask. It's probably one of his private school jokes, I'd imagine. But yeah, Ian Loggy, interesting that already saying he's not going to help. I don't know if that's a strong negotiation tactic that James has got to wire him some money to let him pass. But you talk about the pit lane being busy. Look at the Sentry car. They've had to go up on the dollies there to get the car straight. That would have been, I think, because the elite GT4 McLaren is in the box before and blocking it. Sentry do have the advantage of running 3 cars in total. The GT3 that we see here, the 2 drivers of, and 2 GT4s. I found it quite interesting that in that position they've put the GT3 car first. If they would put it last, that would have been the last pit box available, and thus at least having a clear exit. They may just compromise their GT4 cars and focus on the GT3, but the 14 GT4 car can still win its championship. So they're in 2 title fights here across 2 classes. Yeah. It's going to be a headache for Nathan Threek, no matter how you position those cars.
Absolutely right. Now, this warm-up session, just quickly to make the point about it, it's only got 4 more minutes to go. It doesn't affect the grid. The grid, if it is going to change at all, will be because of these appeals after protests. But that was set in qualifying. This is just a chance for the teams to either make sure that a car is okay after dramas yesterday, and that was a car that had a big spin yesterday. Mike Price, Callum McLeod's Mercedes in the wars yet again. Mike Price at the wheel of it, and he can't dig himself off the wet grass. That's going to be another yellow in the old hairpin. Warm-up session again. You don't even have to do it, but it's a case of practicing pit stops, giving drivers a bit of extra mileage, getting them used to the conditions. That's going nowhere because it illustrates the perils of being on this friction-free grass that is absolutely saturated after all the rain. So we're into the last 3.5 minutes, and that is going to be another yellow flag zone, and that's the replacement McLaren.
Yeah, it looks good in all black, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not saying their livery designer did a bad job, but that looks much better than their normal one. Looks stealthy and mean. Still got the sponsors on it, so no one can be unhappy with that. But yeah, these drivers, Martin Plowman, team owner of Paddock as well, obviously would just be getting their eye in. They managed to recycle the engine cover there, actually. You can see that's still liveried up with it here. So let's have a look on the wet bit, trying to let Ian Campbell pass. Probably picks the throttle up a little bit hard, will just rotate to the inside. And unfortunately for Mike, he's just panicked. He's got a bit of momentum there. He just needs to gently caress that car forwards, and he's slid down as we go. Red flag for that car. The clock has stopped, but I don't think we will go. Interestingly, we've just seen the Garage 59 car, the 88, creep past us. I think that might have left under a red light on pit exit, so hopefully it wasn't and they don't attract a penalty, because that is always looked badly upon from race directors. But yeah, I'll be surprised if we do go back to green with under 3 minutes remaining.
Session will not restart, confirmation, so that's the end of the warm-up. So at the end of that, the best lap time, the Sandy Mitchell Sean Balfe Lamborghini, for what it's worth. But number 14 BMW there, that's another of the cars in the GT4 fight. Chris Salkeld at the wheel of it, and this is the car that scored a victory at Portimao, with Michael Johnston being the driver who will start the race in that car, and indeed he's in the pits with Bryn Lucas.
He certainly is. I spoke to Chris a little bit earlier on, Michael, and I said, wow, how about this? You're in for the overall title. And he said he couldn't believe it. Pro-Am was what you were hoping for. Talk us through this one. How's it got to this stage?
I think we've been quite fortunate in the second half of the season. As I'm sure Chris said, this is my first ever real season of racing. Last year I raced 4 races. So I think at the start it was probably a bit much for me, maybe. I think my performances were okay, but I think I've got faster. Me and Chris have worked better as a pairing. The team have got their head around the car. And we've been consistent. You know, we've had quite a lot of podiums in class and a couple of podiums in the overall. And yeah, we've been consistent, and we've finished races, touch wood. So yeah, we've done okay.
Well, wins and podiums along the way as well. It is going to be a tough order for you to get ahead of the other championship protagonists by virtue of the amount of penalty you've got here when it comes to compensation time in the pits.
Yeah, but we are a pro-am pairing, so I think we've got 16 seconds less than them. They've looked pretty quick this weekend, maybe a bit quicker than us. But you never know, turn one, everything might change after that. So here's hoping.
It always happens at turn one. Michael, best of luck. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you. Thanks.
So Michael Johnston, Chris Salkeld in this BMW, and as Joe was saying, it's run by the Century Motorsport team, so they're looking for a GT4 and a GT3 title. Stressful day for Nathan and his father Clive Freak, who run the team, but with this car, and again just to pick up on the point, being a Pro-Am, it has a shorter pit stop time than a silver graded partnership within GT4, so it'll gain on the pit stops depending on what happens with safety cars, and Donington Decider does have the tendency to have the odd safety car period, does it not?
Well, we've just seen the warm-up, quite a lot of incidents, and that is just a warm-up where you should be relatively chilled, driving within yourself, just getting your eye in. So yeah, I totally agree. I think this afternoon's race is going to be lively, to say the least.
So there is James Cottingham's Mercedes. In many ways, it would be wrong if he were not to be the champion, because he has had such a good season. And I think most people in the paddock say he has been the best of the AMs, the fastest of the AMs. You have to feel a little bit of... I feel a bit sorry for Johnny Adam, who won't be able to bask in that glory if the championship does go James Cottingham's way. James has a really good record in historic racing, whether it's from moderately recent sports prototypes to Jaguar E-types and pretty much everything in between. And ever since he arrived in GT3 racing, he was bang on the money straight away.
Yeah, he's really come up to speed, like you said. This year he's been the class act, and yeah, I do agree with all your sentiments there. I just think Darren Lueng has really come in with a bit of a fresh attitude for an AM as well, being very feisty and elbows out, which has been good. We're used to our AMs being fast now, but normally a bit tentative with overtakes. But yeah, Sandy Mitchell in this 78 car setting the fastest time in qualifying yesterday, but also in warm-up there. Sean Boucher's getting out of the car, speaking to one of the mechanics there. Looks like he's not happy with the window net positioning, maybe. And this is their last chance just to get it all sorted, basically. So a little bit stressed there, I think, for Sean Balfe by the looks of it.
So for what the warm-up times matter, 0.004 of a second between the Balfe-Mitchell Lamborghini and the Johnny Edgar and Miguel Ramos Garage 59 McLaren. Johnny Edgar new to GT racing, having won in the FIA Formula 3 Championship at Monza this year. Third, Morgan Tilrook and Marcus Clutton's McLaren, ahead of Abby Eaton and the redoubtable 74-year-old John Seal with the Fox Motorsport car. Then Jules Gounod and Ian Loggy fifth, and Darren Lung, Dan Harper just ahead of championship rival James Cottingham, sharing with Philip Ellis. James Kell and Ian Campbell come next, ahead of Veneris, and to round out the top 10, Mark Sanson and Will Tregertha. The best of the cars in GT4, the DTO Motorsport McLaren, Josh Rowledge and Aston Miller, 14th overall, ahead of another of the McLarens, the Race Lab car of Tom Wrigley and Ian Goff, third GT4 entrant Seb Hopkins and Josh Miller. Yesterday we had quite a few cars getting in the wars, one being the Simon Orange Michael O'Brien McLaren, but that is out on track this morning, and the car that got involved with it, Kevin Say and Chris Froggett's McLaren, also was out in that session. Joe mentioned number 88 being possibly having crept through the red light, and it is indeed under investigation for its pit exit, so there might be a finger wag to come at Johnny Edgar, who was behind the wheel at the very end of the session. So the race will start at 1 o'clock. We'll be on air from about 12:30 with a build-up to the last round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. The Donington Decider is on track at 1.